The 12 Dancing Princesses, from the book The Tales of Ebony, narrated by Florian, for Natalie. Good evening, Natalie. Once upon a time there was a shepherd's boy whose name was Michael, but everyone called him the Dreamer because he was always walking around gazing at the stars. One hot summer day he was stretched out under an oak watching his sheep as he fell asleep, and in his dream a beautiful woman in a shining gold robe appeared and said, "Michael, why don't you go to the castle and marry a princess?" And then he woke up. That evening, when Michael was sitting at supper with the other farmhands, he told them of his dream, and all the dairymaids made fun of him. But early next morning, before anyone was about, he packed up his belongings into a little bundle, and he set out to the castle where the king of that country lived. Now the king had 12 daughters, each one lovelier than the other, and they slept in 12 beds all in a row. The extraordinary thing about them was that even though they were safely locked in every night, every morning their new satin dancing slippers were worn into holes, and nobody could discover why this had happened. So the king, their father, who was very worried about it, proclaimed that if any prince could discover the secret, he should be allowed to choose one of the princesses for his bride. Many a young prince came to the castle to try and discover the secret, and kept guard outside the princess's bedroom. But in the morning, strange to tell, he had always disappeared and was never seen again. When Michael reached the castle, he offered himself as a gardener's boy, and so it happened that the head gardener required a boy at the time, and so Michael was given the job. His first duty was to gather flowers and make nosegays and present them to the princesses when they came down for breakfast. None of them took any notice of Michael as they swept past him haughtily, except the youngest, who, as she took her little bouquet, smiled at Michael and thought, "What a nice new gardener's boy." Before he had been at the castle very long, Michael had another dream. The lady in the shining gold robe again appeared to him, bearing a cherry laurel, a rose laurel, a golden watering pot, a golden rake, and a silken towel. "Plant these 2 laurel bushes, Michael," she said, "and water them with the golden pot, and rake them with the golden rake, and wipe them with the silken towel. When they have grown to the height of a girl of 15, say to them, 'With this golden pot I have watered thee, with this golden rake I have raked thee, and with this silken towel I have wiped thee,' and they will give you whatever you ask." When Michael woke up, he was surprised to find that the 2 laurels, the golden pot, the golden rake, and the silken towel were actually there. So he did as he had been told, and when the bushes had grown to as tall as a girl of 15, he said to the cherry laurel, "With this golden pot I have watered thee, with this golden rake I have raked thee, and with this silken towel I have wiped thee. Teach me how to become invisible." Instantly a small white blossom appeared from the bush, and Michael gathered it up and put it on his buttonhole, and immediately became invisible. That night, when the princesses went up to bed, Michael, who was still invisible, followed them and crept under one of the beds. As soon as the door was locked, the princesses went to the great wardrobes and took out their most magnificent dresses, into which they changed before the tall mirrors, and each of them put on new satin slippers. When they were all ready, the eldest princess clapped her hands 3 times, and a trapdoor opened in the floor, revealing a flight of stairs. Down these stairs the princesses passed according to their ages, and Michael, who followed last, was in such a hurry he accidentally trod on the youngest prince's chain. "Oh," she exclaimed, "someone is following us. He has trodden on my dress." "Nonsense," replied the oldest princess. "Your chain must have caught on a nail." At the foot of the stairs they passed through a door into a wood full of silver trees that glistened in the moonlight. It's always the moon with us. And then they came to the wood of golden trees, and finally to a wood whose branches shone like diamonds. Beyond this great lake, with 12 boats awaited them, with a prince seated on the oars of each. As the princesses got into the boats, Michael slipped onto one of them, with the youngest, and they all pulled out across the lake to where a splendid palace stood, and from which strains of sweet music floated across the water. "How slowly we are going," complained the little princess. "We are usually the first, and tonight we are the last. I cannot understand it," replied the prince. I was rowing as fast as I could." On reaching the palace, they began to dance, and they danced until their shoes were worn into holes. They sat down and had a delicious repast of eclairs and mangarines, served with golden wine. As the supper was over, the princess hurried to the boats and rowed back to the water. This time Michael chose the oldest princess's boat. As they were passing the silver wood, Michael broke off a little twig as a remembrance, and it made a loud snap. "What can that be?" asked the little princess. "Nothing at all," answered the oldest princess. "It was merely the screech of an owl. You're always imagining something or other." Michael hurried up the stairs in front of them all, opening a window, slid down by climbing a vine, and found himself in the castle garden just in time before his work. That morning, when he presented the nogays, he put a silver twig in one and gave it to the little princess. When she saw this, she looked at Michael as if she would speak, and then changing her mind, she passed on. That evening, Michael again made himself invisible, and again followed the princesses down the secret staircase. This time it was the prince who complained about the heaviness of the boat. "It is the heat," said the little princess. "I am feeling rather warm myself." While they were all dancing, she looked everywhere for the gardener's boy, but she could see no sign of him. On their way back, Michael broke off a twig in the golden wood, and this time it was the eldest princess who heard the snapping noise. "What was that?" she exclaimed. "Oh, it was nothing," answered the little princess, "merely a screeching owl." When Michael handed the bouquet next morning, she saw the golden twig amongst the flowers. "So you know our secret," she said. "Yes, princess." "Then keep it," said the little princess, and flung a purse of gold at his feet. "I do not sell my silence," announced Michael, and walked away without picking up the purse. On the third night, Michael broke off a twig from the diamond wood, and again the eldest sister cried out. "What was that?" "Oh, nothing at all. You're always imagining something or other," answered the little princess. The following morning she found the diamond twig in the middle of her nosegay. She quickly drew Michael aside. "You know what reward the king offers to anyone who discovers our secret?" "Yes, princess." "Then why don't you tell him?" And Michael was silent. Now the sisters had noticed the little princess had been talking to the gardener's boy, and they began to joke to her about it. "Why don't you marry him?" they said. "Then you could live in a cottage by the castle gate and wash up the dishes while your gardener husband is digging potatoes." They kept on teasing the little princess until one of them blurted out what had happened. "Oh, the villain!" cried the eldest princess. "Since he knows our secret, he must be thrown into a dungeon at once." But the little princess would hear none of this. She warned them that if they laid a finger on the gardener's boy, she would go and tell the father of the secret herself of the dancing shoes. So they decided among themselves that Michael should be taken to the ball at the palace, and there he should be given the magic potion to drink, which would make him forget everything except his love of dancing. This was the fate that had overtaken all the princes when they had tried to discover the secret of the shoes. The command was sent to the gardener's boy that he go with them that night. Whereupon Michael went to his rose laurel and said, "With this golden pot I have watered thee, with this golden rake I have raked thee, and with this silken towel I have wiped thee. Dress me like a prince." A pink blossom appeared from the bush, and as soon as Michael had plucked it, he immediately found himself dressed in scarlet velvet from head to toe, with a rich jewel in his cap. He then presented himself to the king and asked permission to attempt the discovery of the secret. The king never suspected that anyone with so grandly dressed could be anything but a prince, so he gave his consent. That night Michael waited outside the princess's door, and when they were ready, they admitted to him and led him down the secret stairs. He danced with all the princesses in turn, and they found him a delightful dancer. Finally he danced with the little princess, and she danced best of all, of course. But he found that he could not say a word to her. As he led her to his seat, she said, "Now you will have your desire." "Have no fear," said Michael, "you shall never be a gardener's wife." Supper was then served, and when they had finished, the oldest princess summoned the page, who brought forward a crystal goblet in which floated a red liquid. It was a magic potion. Michael had but to take one sip, and he would become enchanted, like all the other princes at the palace, and dance with them forever. "The enchanted palace was no more secrets for you," the eldest prince said, and as she handed the goblet to Michael, "We drink to your success." Michael raised the goblet, and as he was on the point of drinking it, the little princess sprang forward and dashed it from his lips. "Do not drink it," she said. "I would rather be a gardener's wife." The crystal goblet smashed into 1,000 pieces, and the magic potion spilled upon the floor. The charm was broken. The princess was released from their enchantment, and as they all hurried back through the woods, the fairy palace crumbled with a mighty rumble and disappeared. And as soon as they reached the castle, Michael took the little princess in his hand and dashed into the king's bedroom and woke him up. "Your Majesty, I have discovered the secret of the holes in the dancing slippers." "Indeed," said the king, who was but half awake. "Then, my boy, you must choose one of my daughters for your bride." "I already have chosen," Michael cried. "That is, unless..." But the little princess settled the matter by giving him a kiss, and she did not become a gardener's wife, because Michael became a prince, and they lived happily ever after. And that was a story from the Tales of Ebony, called The 12 Dancing Princesses. The book was written and made by Harcourt Williams. It was originally printed in 1934, and it was a gift given to me by Natalie. This book was actually read to me by my grandmother, and I have a copy of it today, which means so much. I hope you enjoyed that story, and I will read you another one tomorrow night. But until then, sleep tight and know that I love you with all my heart. Good night, Natalie.